Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The words slice through the golden swell of violins echoing off marble and chandeliers. For a moment, the world stands still. Crystal glasses halt mid-air. Conversations choke mid-sentence. 300 pairs of eyes pivot toward me. Vanessa Carter, the woman who, according to the way Evelyn Whitmore is looking at me, doesn't belong here. My throat tightens, as if a rope is pulling my breath away. A camera phone flashes in my face. I blink against the glare. My stepmother, Evelyn, stands at the top of the grand staircase, draped in shimmering silver, pearls glinting like icicles against her pale throat. She tilts her head slightly, voice crisp as a winter wind. "Oh, Vanessa, did you get confused about your role tonight? Guests aren't supposed to enter through the service hallway, especially if they're just here to serve." A ripple of uneasy laughter sweeps across the ballroom. Some people chuckle nervously, their faces soft with pity. Others smirk, eager for scandal. Chloe Whitmore, Evelyn's daughter, slinks closer, the crimson silk of her gown whispering around her ankles. She raises her phone, camera pointed squarely at me. Her lips curl into a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Smile for the live stream. Vanessa, this is definitely going viral." I can't speak. The taste of humiliation coats my tongue like metal. The chandeliers above seem to pulse with heat. The opulence of the Plaza Hotel blurs around me, towering floral displays, crystal sconces, white-gloved waiters, frozen mid-step. The security guard shifts his weight from foot to foot. He's younger than me, freckles dusted across his nose. His eyes dart from Evelyn to me, as though silently begging me not to make this harder. "Ma'am, please, don't make a scene." A hush descends like a velvet curtain. Even the band in the corner falls silent, the final notes of a jazz standard hanging unfinished in the air. Evelyn's voice rises, delicate but sharp enough to draw blood. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we have a bit of confusion. One of the catering staff seems to think she's a guest." Laughter again louder this time, more assured. Heat floods my chest, burning through the shame. My fingers clutch my midnight blue gown, the satin wrinkling under my grip. A gown I'd chosen carefully, designed by a young black artist I'd mentored at my gallery. A gown I'd dreamed of wearing with my head held high. And now Evelyn is ripping me to shreds beneath crystal chandeliers, in front of New York's elite. Chloe lifts her phone higher. "Seriously, Vanessa, what are you even doing here? Trying to network your way into the family business again, or just hoping to snag some free champagne?" Her laughter is low and mean. Evelyn turns, eyes sweeping over the silent crowd. Her voice oozes faux concern. "Perhaps we should help Vanessa find her way back to the kitchen, where she belongs." Another wave of laughter. Blood roars in my ears. I taste salt. I realize tears are gathering in my eyes, and I blink them back furiously. I will not cry. Not here. Not for them. The guard gently touches my elbow. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to escort you out." A few people avert their gaze. Others can't look away, greedily soaking up the drama. Chloe's voice cuts through the whispers. "God, this is just like when she tried to worm her way into Dad's funeral reception. And security had to ask her to leave then, too." Pain slices through me. My breath hitches, caught between humiliation and rage. My voice is barely a whisper. "I was invited." Evelyn clucks her tongue, stepping closer. "Invited. Oh, sweetheart. We send those little courtesy cards to a lot of people. It doesn't mean you're welcome." The way she says welcome makes my stomach turn. Chloe leans in, phone still rolling. "Who invited you?" "Vanessa. Did you forge Mom's signature again?" I open my mouth, but no sound comes out. My pulse thunders in my temples. I stare out at a ballroom of strangers who once pretended to be my family. People who toasted my father's memory with $1,000 champagne. then erased me from every photograph afterward. My knees threaten to buckle, but I lock them in place. I swallow, hard, and then, somewhere deep inside me, something snaps. My voice emerges, trembling but steady. My husband invited me. A collective gasp rolls through the ballroom like an ocean wave crashing against marble. Chloe scoffs, eyes flashing. Your husband, who the hell would marry you? I stand taller, despite the tremor in my spine. You'll find out soon enough. Evelyn's eyes narrow, cold calculation whirring behind the facade of her perfect smile. Well, let's hope for your sake he actually shows up. Because right now, Vanessa, you're alone. And as the security guard begins to guide me toward the grand doors, a hush settles once again over the ballroom. The crowd parts, heads turning. Because the entrance doors swing open, and standing there, in a perfectly cut black tuxedo, eyes blazing with purpose, is Mason Lee, my husband, and in that single breath, the glittering, poisonous world of Evelyn Whitmore trembles on the brink of collapse. I remember the scent of fresh-cut grass and paint thinner drifting through the hallways of our old brownstone in Brooklyn. My mother, Linda Carter, humming Patsy Cline while brushing crimson strokes across her canvas. My father, Richard Carter, bent over financial ledgers, tie loosened, glasses perched on his nose. The way they'd glance at each other and smile like they were sharing some secret joke only they understood. I used to believe that was what life would always feel like, warm, safe, permanent. But when I was 8 years old, everything shattered. Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. 6 months later, she was gone, and it felt like someone had ripped the sun right out of the sky. My father changed after that. He stopped playing jazz records at night. He stopped cooking Saturday breakfasts. He stopped seeing me, even when he was right there across the dinner table. He started drowning himself in work, as if the constant hum of spreadsheets and contracts could hush the silence Mom left behind. At first, he tried. He'd bring home little gifts, watercolor paper, a new set of oil paints things Mom would have picked out for me. But he'd forget birthdays, or leave mid-dinner to take a call from a client. I'd tuck myself into bed at night, listening to the echo of his footsteps pacing the hardwood floors, and wonder if he remembered I was still there. Then Evelyn Whitmore appeared. I first saw her at a charity gala my father dragged me to, wearing a silver gown that glinted like moonlight. She leaned close to him, laughing at some dry finance joke he told. Her perfume smelled expensive, like gardenias and ice. Within a year, she'd married him, and she moved into our brownstone with her daughter, Chloe. Chloe Whitmore was my age. She had glossy dark hair that fell in perfect waves and a wardrobe full of sparkly dresses. At first, I was thrilled. A sister. Someone to share secrets with, swap clothes, stay up late giggling about crushes. Except Chloe never wanted to share. Not her clothes, not her room, not her mother. She wanted everything to herself. It started small. Evelyn gave Chloe the larger bedroom. Chloe got a brand new pony for her birthday. I got a Hallmark card and a polite smile. Evelyn would say, "Vanessa, sweetheart, use the guest bathroom. Chloe needs privacy." Or, "Chloe has her riding lessons. We'll have to wait on buying your art supplies." Every tiny choice chipped away at me until my father's house no longer felt like my home. Evelyn played her part like a Broadway star. She'd clutch my father's arm, eyes glistening with fake tears. "Richard, I'm trying so hard with Vanessa, but she keeps shutting me out." And he'd just nod, exhausted, beaten down, as if he believed her. During high school, I drowned myself in classes and part-time jobs at the public library. Meanwhile, Chloe jetted off to ski trips in Aspen and fashion shows in Paris. I remember coming home one evening, smelling like library dust and old paper, only to find Evelyn hosting a champagne party for Chloe's new internship at a luxury PR firm. I waved from the doorway. No one waved back. Once in a while, Dad would remember me, He showed up at my senior art show, stood there staring at my canvases, tears shining in his eyes. "You have your mother's talent," he whispered. For a moment, it felt like I had him back. But the moments were fleeting. The summer after my freshman year at Pratt Institute, my father collapsed in his office. Massive heart attack. By the time I raced to the hospital, he was gone. I remember the hospital light stinging my eyes, the antiseptic smell clawing at my throat. At the funeral, Evelyn clung to her black lace veil, sobbing prettily, while Chloe dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. No one looked at me. It was as if I'd ceased to exist. But the real blow came during the reading of the will. My father left Evelyn everything: the brownstone, the investments, the art collection my mother curated piece by piece. Chloe received a trust fund that could pay for a lifetime of shopping sprees and private jets. I was left enough to finish college and barely a year's worth of rent. When I protested, Evelyn patted my hand and said in a voice dripping with sweet poison, "Your father wanted you to learn independence, Vanessa, to understand the value of hard work. Chloe, she has different needs. Different needs." The words etched themselves into my bones. A week later, Evelyn handed me 2 suitcases and told me it was time for me to find my own path. Chloe stood in the hallway, arms crossed, a cruel little smirk twisting her perfect lips. "Don't worry about holidays," she said. "Mom and I have new traditions." I left the brownstone that day with 2 bags, a shattered heart, and my mother's paintbrushes. From that moment on, I promised myself I'd never again beg for a seat at Evelyn Whitmore's table. I built my life from the ground up, piece by piece, one exhausted breath after another. At 24, I was living in a cramped studio in the Lower East Side, where the pipes clanked like ghosts in the walls and the window barely kept out the noise of Manhattan. But it was mine. I worked my way up from unpaid internships to assistant roles, until finally I landed a job as a gallery manager at Meridian Contemporary in Soho. It wasn't a big-name place, but it felt like home. There, surrounded by canvases splashed in neon colors and sculptures twisted from scrap metal, I felt alive again. I poured myself into discovering new artists. Artists who reminded me of my mother, of her fearless brushstrokes, of the way she painted her grief into color so raw it made your chest ache. I didn't think about Evelyn. I didn't think about Chloe. I told myself the past was over, locked away. Then one Tuesday afternoon in late March, during an icy drizzle that made the city look like a wet oil painting, he walked in. At first, he looked like just another lost tourist-soaked hair, rain dripping from the collar of his navy peacoat. He paused in front of a piece by a young artist from Bushwick. Vivid yellows slashed across matte black canvas, titled Urban Solitude. I cleared my throat, pushing my hair back behind my ears. "Looking for anything in particular?" He turned and smiled. A real smile, the kind that crinkles the corners of someone's eyes. "Not sure. I'm just escaping the rain. But this piece, there's something about it. Feels like loneliness. But hope, too." My chest squeezed a little. Because he got it. Most people came in wanting prices or bragging rights. But he stood there, really looking. We talked for nearly an hour, moving from one canvas to the next, our voices echoing in the hushed white walls of the gallery. He told me about growing up in Seattle, about parents who were both teachers, about how he dropped out of grad school because he believed he could build something that mattered. He didn't tell me exactly what he built, and I didn't press, because for once, it felt good to talk to someone who wasn't interested in my last name, my past, or the weight of my family drama. When he finally slipped a sleek business card into my hand, I nearly dropped it. Mason Lee, CEO and founder, Lee Tech Ventures. A name I'd seen splashed across Forbes and Fast Company. But that day, he was just a man with damp hair and kind eyes, talking to me about brush strokes. Our first coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend museum trips, long walks through Central Park, late-night talks about everything and nothing. He never asked about Evelyn, or Chloe, or why the idea of family made me flinch. Instead, he'd send me texts like, "Found a new artist today who's obsessed with painting subway stations. Reminded me of you." Or, "Do you want to check out the new rooftop exhibit at the Met? I'll bring coffee." For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a problem, not as the forgotten daughter, but as me. Still, I kept my past locked away. Because how could I explain the truth? That the glittering world he inhabited charity galas, private jets, whispered names on donor walls, was the same world that spit me out like I was gum stuck to its designer shoes. And because part of me, the small wounded part, still believed that if he knew the whole story, he'd leave too. But Mason, he was patient. He never pushed. Instead, he shared pieces of himself, bit by bit. How he hated living in penthouses because they felt too far from the street noise. How he kept the same pair of battered sneakers from college because they reminded him never to forget where he came from. How money, in his mind, was only worth anything if it could solve a real problem. And sometimes he'd look at me and say, "You don't have to tell me everything. Just let me be here with you." And somehow, that was enough. Meanwhile, the world I'd left behind kept spinning. I'd hear whispers, see social media posts, Evelyn hosting galas, posing with senators, Chloe showing off some new charity initiative that smelled suspiciously like a PR stunt. They were building an empire of glossy photos and high society connections. I wanted no part of it, until the day I spotted Evelyn's name mentioned in a business article, right next to an anonymous investor rumored to be funding her new Whitmore Foundation expansion, and a flicker of unease crawled down my spine. Because I knew, if Evelyn ever found out who Mason really was, she'd find a way to twist it into her next power play. And I wasn't sure I was strong enough to face that storm. Mason and I grew closer the way tide slips quietly onto shore, gentle at first, then impossible to ignore. 3 months after we met, he invited me to his place in Tribeca, a loft that surprised me because it wasn't dripping in gold or guarded by a doorman with an earpiece. Instead, the walls were brick and raw, hung with abstract paintings from emerging artists whose names no one knew yet. Stacks of books crowded every surface economics texts, photography monographs, volumes of poetry. A battered upright piano stood in one corner, keys worn pale from years of use. He played me a piece one night, fingers stumbling over the notes, and grinned as if he'd just won the lottery. "This is my happy place," he confessed. Not boardrooms, not black tie events, just this. Sometimes, I'd wake up in his bed, hair tangled, sunlight spilling across linen sheets, and I'd pretend for a few precious seconds that I'd always belonged here, that I'd never been the girl shuffled out of her own father's home. Mason never pressed me to talk about my family, but he saw the shadows behind my eyes, and when he held me, it felt like he was holding the pieces of me together. Then, one autumn evening, as the city shimmered with the glow of traffic and neon, he took me up to the rooftop. The skyline blazed around us, Empire State, Chrysler, Hudson Yards like 1,000 diamonds pinned against velvet. Mason slid his fingers through mine. "Vanessa, I love you. Not just the parts you show the world, but the ones you try to hide, the pain, the scars, the way you fight to stand on your own 2 feet. Even when the world tries to knock you down." My breath caught, clouds of it curling in the cool air. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a simple, elegant ring. "I don't care about the Whitmores, or anyone else's opinion. I want a life with you. Just you. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred the city lights. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes. We didn't tell anyone. Not Evelyn, not Chloe, not even most of Mason's business circles. We married 2 months later in a tiny ceremony at City Hall, witnessed by 2 of Mason's closest friends. No fancy dresses, no magazine photographers. Just vows whispered beneath cheap fluorescent lights, and the kind of laughter that bubbles up from your soul. Afterward, he took me to a greasy spoon diner where we split pancakes and coffee. I wore my mother's old denim jacket over my white dress, and Mason said I'd never looked more beautiful. We moved into the loft together, and I insisted on keeping my job at the gallery, because I needed to prove to myself more than anyone that I could still stand on my own 2 feet. Mason understood. He respected my boundaries. Never once did he make me feel small for wanting my own identity. But the past, I was learning, has a way of circling back. One afternoon, about a year into our marriage, I found an envelope addressed to Mason on the coffee table. A thick cream card inside read, "The Whitmore Foundation cordially invites you to join our board of directors for the upcoming expansion of philanthropic initiatives in the greater New York area." And there, printed in delicate cursive, was Evelyn Whitmore's name? My blood turned to ice. Mason looked at me, brow creased. "Do you know her?" I couldn't breathe. The last thing I wanted was Evelyn clawing her way into our world. But the truth spilled out about the years of isolation, the inheritance, the manipulation, the way Chloe filmed my humiliation for fun. Mason listened in silence, eyes darkening with each word. When I finished, he reached across the table, covering my trembling hands with his. "Vanessa, she doesn't get to have a say in our life. Not anymore. But if she's trying to use my name or my resources, that's different. I won't let her exploit this." The next few weeks passed in a blur of board meetings and phone calls as Mason's legal team quietly investigated Evelyn's new expansion. What they found chilled me to the bone. Evelyn was planning to leverage Mason's tech ventures, courting investors with whispers of exclusive insider access, using her foundation's name as a shield for personal gain. And she was subtly dropping hints in society circles that Chloe was romantically linked to an up-and-coming tech mogul. Mason scoffed when he heard that. They're trying to make connections that don't exist. For power, for money. My stomach twisted, because I knew Evelyn's tactics. She'd spin any lie if it meant elevating her own social standing. And the worst part? It wasn't just about me anymore. She was circling Mason now, like a shark scenting blood in the water. But even as fear coiled in my chest, I felt something else rise inside me, a stubborn, white-hot resolve. Evelyn had stolen enough from me. She wasn't going to steal my future, too. Not this time. The night of the Gala of Hope arrived wrapped in velvet skies and the glittering lights of Manhattan. I stood at the mirror in our loft, smoothing the midnight blue gown over my hips. It was the same gown Evelyn would later mock, but tonight, as I slipped it on, I felt powerful. The dress shimmered like starlight, its clean lines hugging my frame without screaming for attention. It was elegant, confident. It was me. Mason watched from the doorway, hands tucked into his pockets, eyes soft and proud. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. I stared at my reflection at the woman who'd clawed her way back from nothing. "I need to do this," I whispered, "for me." Mason nodded. "Then go show them who you are." The plan was simple. I'd go alone. Mason would arrive later, if I needed him. We both agreed if Evelyn was going to try to embarrass me, I wanted her to do it thinking I was alone. I wanted her to reveal her true colors without any shadows to hide behind. The Plaza Hotel sparkled like a diamond as I stepped from the cab. A red carpet stretched toward towering golden doors. Cameras flashing as socialites posed in designer gowns worth more than my entire salary. Inside, chandeliers dripped crystals like frozen rain. Waiters glided through the room with silver trays, offering glasses of champagne. A string quartet played something soft and elegant. Everywhere I turned, people sparkled diamonds, silk, polite laughter. My stomach twisted. But I forced myself to keep my chin high as I approached the check-in table. "Good evening," I said. "Vanessa Carter." The woman behind the iPad scanned the list, then offered a practiced smile. "Of course, Ms. Carter, welcome to the Gala of Hope." I stepped into the ballroom and nearly collided with Patricia Whitmore, Evelyn's cousin, draped in emerald satin. "Vanessa," she gasped. "My goodness, I didn't know you'd be here." She looked me up and down as if checking for flaws. "Still, working at that little art gallery? Are you—" Before I could answer, her husband Gerald appeared, drink in hand. Well, look who it is. Evelyn's stepdaughter? The way he said stepdaughter felt like an insult. I smiled tightly. "It's lovely to see you both." Patricia waved vaguely toward the center of the room. "Evelyn's over there with Chloe. You should say hello. It's the polite thing to do." My pulse throbbed in my temples as I turned toward the main table. Evelyn stood in a perfect halo of soft lighting, laughter ringing like glass bells around her. She wore silver tonight, the same shade she'd worn the night she first ensnared my father. Beside her, Chloe glowed in scarlet silk. Her lips curved into that same sharp, knowing smile. The moment Chloe spotted me, her eyebrows arched high. She leaned close to Evelyn and whispered something. Evelyn's laughter stuttered, then resumed, sweeter than sugar but somehow brittle. "Vanessa," she called, voice echoing across the ballroom. "Oh, darling, we didn't expect you to come." Every head turned. Eyes fell on me like stage lights. "I wouldn't have missed it," I said evenly. "The Children's Hospital is such a worthy cause." Evelyn stepped closer, a gloved hand brushing my arm. "My dear, is that dress off the rack?" Chloe snorted. "Or is it from that, what did you call it, Mom? That cute little gallery boutique?" My fingers tightened around my clutch. "It's a piece by an emerging designer I work with." I said, "He's talented. I believe in supporting new artists." Evelyn waved one manicured hand as if shooing away a fly. "Oh, how persistent of you." Her gaze shifted, scanning the faces gathering around us. "Everyone, this is Vanessa. She used to live with us. She's very passionate about art." She said it like a flaw. Chloe chimed in, eyes gleaming, "And about trying to crash family events." A hush rippled outward as Evelyn lifted her champagne flute. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight to support our precious Children's Hospital. And a little housekeeping. It seems one of the serving staff might be a bit confused tonight about her role." My mouth went dry. Laughter bubbled up in pockets around the ballroom. Evelyn's eyes locked on mine. "Vanessa, dear, I know you've always enjoyed helping, but the staff entrance is in the back." Chloe lifted her phone, camera aimed right at my face. "This is gold." "Seriously, Vanessa, why are you here?" "Hoping to network, find a rich husband." A shrill, cruel laughter cascaded around me. My vision blurred. My fingers itched to throw my champagne in Chloe's face. But I swallowed hard, voice shaking. "I'm not alone." "Oh," Evelyn purred. "Your imaginary husband again, Vanessa. We've been over this." "No one's buying it," Chloe sneered. "I checked your Instagram. No wedding photos, no ring shots, no husband, just you. And your sad little gallery." The heat rose up my neck, pounding in my skull. But even through the roar in my ears, I clung to one thought. Mason was coming, and I wanted Evelyn and every single person in this room to see exactly who I'd become. Who I belonged to, and who I was, all on my own. The ballroom seemed to contract around me. Air squeezed thin and sharp, chandeliers burning so bright they hurt my eyes. Chloe tilted her phone closer, zooming in on my face. "Come on. Vanessa, tell us his name. This mystery husband. Or are you just trying to look important?" I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Then, a murmur rolled through the crowd. Heads turned. The heavy gold doors of the ballroom swung wide, and Mason Lee strode in like he'd been forged out of midnight steel and Manhattan skyline. His tuxedo was sleek and understated, perfectly tailored, but it wasn't the suit that silenced the room. It was his presence. Tall, broad-shouldered, eyes burning with something fierce and controlled. The music faltered, the quartet dropping a note before falling utterly silent. Evelyn blinked, faltering for the first time all night. Chloe's phone wavered, her mouth falling open. Mason's gaze locked on mine, sweeping over the tension in my shoulders, the flush of shame on my cheeks. He moved through the parted crowd like water-carving stone. "Vanessa," he said, voice low, calm, dangerous. "Is there a reason my wife is being harassed by security at an event we're funding?" Evelyn stiffened. "I'm sorry, your wife." Her voice cracked like glass. Chloe let out a breathy laugh, high and shaky. "Oh, Mason, this is just a misunderstanding. Vanessa likes to exaggerate." Mason turned his head slowly toward her. "And you like to record people's humiliation for your social media feed, don't you, Chloe?" She flinched, tucking her phone behind her back like a kid hiding a broken vase. Evelyn fluttered a hand at a waiter as if he might save her. "Mr. Lee, this is really not the place." Mason cut her off, tone razor sharp. "I think this is exactly the place. A charity gala, a gathering of so-called philanthropists. Seems like the perfect venue for a little honesty." He raised his voice just enough for it to carry. "For those who don't know me, my name is Mason Lee. I'm the founder of Lee Tech Ventures and the primary donor behind tonight's Gala of Hope." Gasps erupted like fireworks. Someone dropped a glass, shattering into crystal shards on the marble floor. Evelyn's face went pale, lips parting in a silent "oh." Chloe actually staggered back a step. Mason didn't even blink. This event was funded anonymously because I believe philanthropy should be about helping people, not polishing your public image. But now I'm discovering the woman I love, the woman I married, was publicly humiliated by people who call themselves family. Evelyn tried to recover, smoothing her voice into silken persuasion. "Mason, darling, Vanessa has always had a tendency to overstate things. We had no idea you were connected. If we had, of course, we'd have treated her differently." Mason arched an eyebrow. "So respect only applies if someone's married to me. Not if they're your stepdaughter. Not if they're a human being." Silence crushed the ballroom. Even the waiters were frozen. Champagne bottles tilted mid-pour. I stepped forward, my voice trembling but steady. "They never treated me like family. Not when my father died. Not when I was left with nothing. Not when I was trying to build a life on my own." Evelyn shot me a warning look. "Vanessa, stop this. You're embarrassing yourself." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "No, I think for the first time I'm telling the truth." I turned to the crowd, voice rising. Evelyn Whitmore has been using her foundation not just to help the children, but to leverage influence, court political favors, and now to try and worm her way into Mason's business. Evelyn gasped, color draining from her face. "That's a lie." Mason's jaw flexed. "It's not. My legal team uncovered your proposals. Evelyn, promises you made to investors about exclusive introductions to my technology partnerships. That's why your foundation wanted me on your board. It had nothing to do with charity." A murmur swept the room. Chloe looked wildly between us. "Mom, is that true?" Evelyn snapped, voice fraying. "Chloe, stay out of this." But Chloe stepped back, eyes wide. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You told me we'd be safe, that no one would ever know." Mason turned back to the audience. "This is why I fund anonymously, because too many people in these rooms think charity is just another chess piece, another cocktail party brag." He looked at Evelyn, eyes hard. "I will continue to support the Children's Hospital, but I will never, ever attach my name to any organization you run." The board members exchanged looks, some stepping subtly away from Evelyn. Evelyn tried one last time, voice trembling with false warmth. "Mason, please, think about appearances, about the impact this could have on the foundation's reputation." Mason gave a thin, cold smile. That's why I'm doing this publicly." He turned to me, voice softening. "Vanessa, is there anything you'd like to say?" I drew in a shaky breath, feeling every eye on me. "And let the words come I'm not the girl you pushed out of my father's house anymore. Evelyn, I'm not your dirty little secret. And I will not, ever, let you humiliate me again. My voice rang off the crystal and marble. And if anyone here wants to know who I am, I'm Vanessa Carter-Lee, artist, gallery director, Mason's wife, and a woman who deserves a place in any room, on my own terms. Applause began hesitantly, then grew, rippling outward like a tide. Evelyn stood frozen, eyes glassy, as the ballroom swelled with sound. Mason slipped his arm around my waist, whispering into my hair. You did it. You don't need my name to shine. But I'm honored that you share it. Chloe lowered her phone, face pale, mascara streaking her cheeks. For the first time in my life, I felt taller than Evelyn Whitmore. The applause faded into a hush that seemed to linger, like the echo of a wave after it crashes against the shore. People shifted uncertainly, stealing glances between me and Evelyn, as though trying to decide which way the social wind would blow. I took one last look at the woman who'd tried so hard to make me disappear. Evelyn stood rigid, silver gown glinting beneath the chandeliers, her lips pinched into a brittle line. Chloe hovered a step behind her, mascara smudged, cheeks blotchy pink. For a flicker of a moment, I felt a pang, not sympathy, exactly, but the cold realization that this was how Evelyn had trained us both to hide behind perfect facades, terrified of being seen for who we really were. But I let the pity go, because I didn't owe Evelyn Whitmore anything. Mason leaned in close, murmuring, "We can leave. You know, right now. You've more than earned it." But I shook my head. No, I'm staying. I'm not running anymore. The gala slowly resumed around us, but the atmosphere had changed. A cautious respect radiated from people who'd barely acknowledged me before. Old acquaintances approached, awkwardly trying to offer apologies or sudden praise for my strength. Patricia Whitmore swept over, her voice trembling with sugary regret. "Oh, Vanessa, we've all been so misinformed. You must come to dinner soon. We'd love to reconnect." I gave her a polite smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "I appreciate it, Patricia, but my calendar's pretty full these days." Because the truth was, I didn't want back into that world. I'd built my own. Mason and I slipped away just as dessert was being served. Outside, the streets of Manhattan were slick with rain. The neon lights reflected in pools like stained glass. Mason hailed a cab, but I tugged his hand. "Let's walk." So we did through the chill spring air, our breath misting between us. For the first time in years, my shoulders felt light. No more secrets. No more hiding. Back at the loft, Mason poured 2 glasses of cheap red wine. He sat across from me on the couch, eyes gentle and bright. "You were incredible tonight," he said. "I'm so damn proud of you." I set my glass down, voice low. "You know, I used to think I had to either cut them off completely or keep begging them to let me in. I never realized there was a third option." Mason tilted his head. "Which is to stay true to myself and let people show me who they really are and choose accordingly." A slow grin tugged at his mouth. "I like that third option." I reached for his hand. "There's something else I've been thinking about." He arched an eyebrow. "Oh," I nodded. "I want to start something, a foundation. Not for Evelyn's kind of charity, but for real help, for kids, especially girls, who've been shoved out of their families, left to fend for themselves. Art saved me when I thought I was invisible. I want to give that to someone else." Mason's fingers squeezed mine, warmth radiating through me. "Let's do it, together." So we filed paperwork for the Carter-Lee Foundation, dedicated to funding therapeutic art programs for youth dealing with grief, abandonment, and trauma. I gave my first speech at a small fundraiser we hosted 6 months later, standing on a simple stage in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, surrounded by canvases painted in bold, chaotic colors. I spoke the truth I'd learned the hard way. Family is not the people who share your last name. It's the people who show up for you when the world turns cold. The ones who love you without needing to reshape you. And if you've been told you're too much, too emotional, too loud, too anything, remember, your light might be blinding only to those who can't handle its brilliance. People cried, people clapped, and for the first time, the applause wasn't for surviving my past. It was for the future I was building. Afterward, I stepped off the stage, breathless, and Mason wrapped me in his arms. "You're shining so bright," he whispered against my temple. "And you don't even know it." I pulled back, meeting his eyes. "I think maybe I finally do." We stayed until midnight, talking to young artists who wanted to share their stories. One teenage girl, hair dyed lavender and eyes wary, slipped me a crumpled sketch. "I drew this when I thought no one would ever see me," she murmured. I unfolded it, my chest tightening. It was a swirl of color, fierce reds, tender blues, raw and brave and alive. I handed it back to her gently. "I see you, and your art deserves a place in the world." She blinked hard, trying not to cry, walking home under the glow of streetlights. Mason slid his arm around my waist. "Vanessa, I know tonight closed a chapter, but it also feels like the start of something big." I smiled, leaning into him. "It is. And this time, it's on my terms." Sometimes I lie awake in the middle of the night, listening to the hum of the city outside our windows, sirens wailing distant and soft, like echoes of the life I used to live. I think about all the versions of me that existed before this moment. The little girl standing in art studios, paint-streaked and giggling under her mother's gentle hands. The teenager folding up her clothes into 2 suitcases, pretending she didn't hear Evelyn's cool dismissal echoing off marble floors. The 20-something woman staring at subway tiles, telling herself over and over she didn't need anyone's help. And now me, Vanessa Carter-Lee, gallery director, wife, founder of a foundation meant to help other kids who once felt invisible. Sometimes the memories come back, sharp and sudden, Evelyn's voice dripping poison, Chloe's phone glinting under ballroom lights, the laughter slicing through me like glass. I used to wonder if those wounds would ever stop bleeding. But here's what I've learned. They don't disappear, but they do scar over. And those scars, they become the map of who you are. They remind you that you survived, and that you're stronger than you ever imagined. People often ask me now, do you hate them? Do you wish revenge on Evelyn and Chloe? And the honest answer is no. Because carrying hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I refuse to waste any more of my life seeking vengeance on people who were never capable of loving me right. Instead, I've chosen something better. To build my own table. To make room for people who show up, who tell the truth, who love without measuring the worth of your name or your bank account. And that's what I hope for anyone listening to me right now. Because maybe you've got your own Evelyn Whitmore, your own Chloe, your own crowd of people telling you you're not enough, or too much, or unworthy of a seat at the table. Maybe you've stood in a room full of laughter and felt utterly, crushingly alone. I want you to hear me when I say this. You are not alone. You are not the sum of the people who left you behind, or the family who couldn't see your worth, or the love that was withheld because you didn't fit some perfect image. You are worthy of kindness, of respect, of love that doesn't come with conditions, and you don't have to keep proving yourself to those who refuse to see you. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is walk away and choose yourself. Choose the life you want. Choose the people who show up for you when there's nothing in it for them, because that's real family. And here's the thing. Sometimes, the door you slam shut on toxic people is the same door that opens into freedom. I didn't win Evelyn's approval, or Chloe's acceptance, and I don't want it anymore. Instead, I won my own respect, my own voice, my own damn life. And if you're listening to me now, I want you to know, it's never too late to do the same. You get to decide your story. You get to decide who has a seat at your table, and your light It's not too much. It's exactly as bright as it's supposed to be. So, if this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible, if you're trying to find the courage to stand up and say, "I deserve better," I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me your story, or just say hi. Because your voice matters. And if you believe in building your own table, if you're ready to claim your worth, if you're done living small for the comfort of others, like this video, subscribe for more stories about finding strength where you thought you had none. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of self-love is finally letting go of those who can't love you properly, even if they share your name.